Here we go. Today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah daf Nun Hey 55, and we will begin from the Gemara on daf Nun Daled Amid Beis. It just talks about the philosophy of why God allows certain things in the world. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Tanu Rabbanan, let me make it as big as possible. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Sha'alu filosifin es hazakeinu b'roimi. The philosophers asked the Jewish people, the elders of the Jewish people in Rome. There was a big Jewish community in Rome, apparently, and they would ask them philosophical questions. Im elakechem einim ritzoynim ba'avodah zarah. If God doesn't like avodah zarah, why doesn't he get rid of it? Why doesn't he nullify it? And every time you make an avodah zarah, all of a sudden it should get destroyed. Amrlam, so they responded, Ilu l'dava she'ein ha'olam tzarech loy haya oivdim. If the goyim would be serving something that's not needed for the world, right? Harehu mevatla, then God would indeed get rid of all the avodah zarahs. But the problem is, Harei in oivdim, the goyim are serving lachama to the sun, levana to the moon, lakachavim to the stars, lamazaz to constellation. Those are needed to run the universe. Should we get rid of the universe because some fools are serving those celestial bodies? So therefore, God lets it run. The olam runs on normal. And shoitim that do that destroyed themselves, they're going to give a din v'cheshbon. Same idea. Sometimes you ask yourself if drugs are bad, why doesn't we get rid of it? The answer is it's good, taken with precaution. So the same here. Another pshat. Another pshat of why God doesn't immediately react in the world. If a guy steals a pound of wheat, uzraha and bakarka, and he plants it in the ground, dinhu shloi titzmach. Of course, it should not. Logic should dictate that God should be angry and not make the seeds sprout because he stole it. Ella oilam kimin haginoik v'hoylach. The world just runs on its own. Those fools that destroyed by stealing, they're going to give a din v'cheshbon. They're going to have to pay for it. Davaracha, same idea, gets even worse. Harei shabo aleishes chavere, someone who's mizana with his friend's wife, and dinhu really shleitis aber. God doesn't like mamzerim, so that it's the logic should dictate that the lady should not become pregnant. Ella oilam kimin hagei. The world acts on its own. Those that destroyed themselves are going to have to give a din v'cheshbon. Behind the Amar Rish Lakish says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said, it's not enough that the Rishonim make my stamp. God has a stamp how he creates human beings, and they make it, like it's a nothing. And not only that, they force me to sign off on it against my will. And God, in other words, God does not want to create a human being that was created from an illicit relationship. However, God's hand is, so to speak, forced, because that's the way natural things happen. Male, female, you get a baby. So that's it. So God is angry, but he's not going to stop that from happening. One philosopher asked Rabbi Gamliel, it says in the Torah, Ki Hashem Elokecha eish oichlehu kel kana. God our God is a consuming fire. He gets, he's a God that can take revenge. So if God is such a fired up person, fired up being, let's say, so why is God only angry those that serve idols and not angry at the idol itself? That's what this philosopher asked Rabbi Gamliel. Amaloi, so Rabbi Gamliel answered, I'm going to give you an example, a parable, what this is compared to. There was this human being that had this one son. This guy, his only son, raised a dog, and the dog he named after his father. Ukushi Nishban, when he would swear around the house, I'm swearing in the name of my father, the dog. So, Kishashama Melech, when the king heard about what his son is doing, Amihu Kayas, who is he going to get angry? Ala Ben Hukayas, or Ala Kelev Hukayas? Is he going to get angry at the dog, or is he going to get angry at the son? Certainly, he's going to get angry at the son. Havi Oima Loy Ala Ben Hukayas. He's going to get angry at the son because the dog did nothing. The dog is a nothing. So the philosopher did not like Rabbi Gamliel's answer because when you're comparing the dog to a human being, we can say that the human being is so much more than a dog. But the philosopher felt that the Avodah Zarah is very, very special. It has some powers to it. You're calling my Avodah Zarah dog? It has some power. Amar loy, so Rabbi Gamliel asked Mara Isa, what kind of power do you see in your Avodah Zarah? Amar loy, so the philosopher said, Pam achas nafla deleka be'irenu. One time, a fire fell in our city. The entire city was burnt down. Base Avodah Zarah, this church, Loy Nisraf, was not burnt down. So we see that it has certain power. Lahavdil, I mean, the same idea. When 9/11, when the towers crashed, the St. Paul cathedral on Wall Street was not touched. So everybody kept saying, oh, it must be a very, very holy place. It was there from the 1700s. You know what I'm talking about. I think it's on Broadway. So we see that it has power. So the Ram Gamliel said, I'll give you another parable. That a country rebelled against him. When he goes to war, does he go to war against the live beings or with the dead? He goes to war against the live. So therefore, the Avodah Zarah, maybe it has a power, but it's a dead thing. So therefore, God is only angry with the servers of Avodah Zarah, but not the Avodah Zarah itself. Amalai. So the philosopher says, Kela ata kairaisa, mesa ata kairaisa. You're calling it dead? If God feels this is a worthless dead dog, so why doesn't he get rid of all of Avodah Zarah in the world? Amalai, so Rabbi Gamliel told him exactly what we found in the Mishnah. If they served on things that are not needed in this world, God would get rid of it. But they're serving for streams and water holes, things that are needed in the world. Get rid of the universe because of fools. There's a pasuk like that says God just lets the world go. Should I get rid of the entire world? Should I get rid of man and animals? Should I get rid of any stumbling block of Rishoyim that are worshiping birds and fish? I mean, you can't get rid of the natural world. Because they are Rishoyim that are stumbling over them and worshiping them, God should get rid of them. They even serve human beings. So I should get rid of human beings from the world. So God lets that fly, and that's the world. And don't think that God can't get rid of Avodah Zarah. Shaul Agrippus Sar Tzavas Ram Gamliel. This Agrippus, who is a general, asked Rabbi Gamliel, it says in your Torah, Ki Hashem lekecha eish oichla hu elkana. We say God is angry or jealous. Klum miskane el chacham b'chachma v'giba b'giba asher b'asher. A chacham, a smart person, is jealous of another smart person. A powerful person is jealous of another powerful person. A rich person is jealous of a rich person. Why should God be jealous of an Avodah Zarah? Amaloi. So Rabbi Gamliel answered that Gripas. Let me give you a parable. And basically what the parable is going to say is that Kana doesn't mean God is jealous. God gets so angry and insulted. Because you imagine, a man goes and has an affair with his another woman over his wife. If the other woman is a multi-billionaire, so she's not really as angry. I mean, she's angry that her husband's going off with another woman, but That's or if, but eventually, in those days you can marry two women. She's not, she understands it more. But Chusim man, if he goes around with the HR person, so Miskanabo, he's angry at her. So the same thing, we're connected with God. So when we start messing around with Avodah Zarah, God is so betrayed and insulted by it, he gets very angry. Amalei Zunin Rabbi Kiva. So Zunin, the Jew, said to Rabbi Kiva, his name is Zunin, Libi v'libchi yada d'avodah zarah les by mashasha. We know that avodah zarah has no power. But the problem is, some people go to avodah zarahs with broken limbs, and they come out and they're healed. My tama, how does that work? Rabbi Kiva told Zunim, let me give you a parable. There was a reliable person in the city. Everybody would deposit money by him. They didn't need witnesses. He was such a reliable guy. If he wrote it down, and you can be relied that you're going to get your money when you request it. And one person came and deposited money with witnesses to this guy. He didn't trust the banker. And one time he forgot and deposited money by the banker without witnesses. So now he came to collect his money. Amalai Ishtos, his wife of the banker, said, now deny it. Because right now was the first time he deposited money with you without Adam. He didn't trust you. So now deny it. Amalah, so the banker said, just because he didn't do proper by depositing the money by me without Adim, should I lose my reputation? Of course I'm not going to deny it. I know what he deposited, I'm going to give it back. Av kach, says the Gemara, a big klal. Yusurim, let's say sicknesses, right? Suffering. When they send it on a human being, mashbiyan oisei, they make the sickness, let's say the disease, take a shavua, an oath. It shouldn't enter the person's body only on that day. And it should only leave him on that day and that hour. It's exact. Through this doctor, through this drug. So now, when it so happened that the disease was going to leave this human being anyway, the sick person went to a house of Avodah Zarah. So the Yisurin, the suffering, said, we should not leave, so he shouldn't think that it's the Avodah Zarah is causing us to leave. Then the suffering say, the sickness, is a being by itself. It says to itself, because this fool is doing improper by going to the Avodah Zarah, we should lose our oath. We took an oath to God that we're going to leave today. Just because it happened the day that we're leaving, he's going to an Avodah Zarah, and he's going to think that the Avodah Zarah healed him. That's why we should not leave him. Rabbi Yochanan said about sicknesses that attack a human being. Why do we say a pasuk? V'chaloim roim v'ne'amonim. Sicknesses are bad and they're reliable. Roim b'shlichasim, they're bad when they're sent on a person. V'ne'amonim, and they're reliable b'shvuasim, when in their oath. That there's a certain oath. Every sickness that affects a human being took an oath by God that it's going to affect the human being and then leave on a certain date. So every sickness has a certain time that it's going to leave a person. Except that's by Goyim. A Jew could ask God to make it leave and violate its oath prior to the time. That's why you say in Shemon Esrei, Roife Choyle Ama Yisrael. The Ama Yisrael have the ability to request God heal them earlier than they're supposed to. But normally, the sicknesses has a certain time to leave a person. So if it so happens that the person went to an Avodah Zarah, the sicknesses is still going to leave the person if that's the designated time. Amalei Rava Bar Yitzchak Rav Yehuda. Ha'ika, the Rava Bar Yitzchak said to Rav Yehuda, Ha'ika base of Avodah Zarah ba'ashrim, there's a place of Avodah Zarah in our city, the Kimatzrech Alma Lemitra, when there's a drought in the world, B'schazali Bechelma, it appears to someone in a dream, Va'amalu, and says to that person, Shachtili Gavra, slaughter, kill one human being, Va'isimitrin, then I'll bring rain. Shachtili Gavra, they slaughter a human being, the Asimitrin, rain comes. So we see that that rain is affected by this worship of Avodah Zarah. Amalei. So Rabbi Yehuda said, Hashta Yahavashchivna Layamalichul Milsi. If I would have died early, I wouldn't be able to explain this to you. But now I'm still around. Let me explain you why this happens in the world. Why does Hashem make this? God separated and gave the nations of the world they have certain deities that they worship to. But cholak means God makes them slippery in words, and in order that they should believe in their avodah zarah and be lost from the world. In other words, they really want to do avodah zarah. They're just looking for any excuse to say, "Oh, this avodah zarah has power." So that's why God makes it look like that it's because of this service to avodah zarah that's brought the rain. But really, obviously, it has nothing to do with that avodah zarah. Just God does that because if a person has a certain wants to defile himself, they don't stop him in heaven. Not only that, when the person wants to do something good, not only they don't stop him, but they also help him along. That's what Rish Lakish says. What does the pasuk says? If you want to mock, God will let you mock. But for humble people, God will give them certain attraction. If you want to defile yourself, they open the door. Defile yourself. But if you want to purify yourself, not only that, Messiah, I say they give you help. And so ends this sugya regarding Avodah Zarah. Now we shift to Yayin Nesach. I'm calling up a picture on the screen, it's an important picture, of how a wine press looked. Basically, a wine press, you bring the grapes to over here to do the wine press, and you would crush the grapes and let the juices fall down through a incline, a slope, and then it goes out through a pipe into a basket that like a sifter that sifts out the pits and the peels and whatever, and then to a pit which is a pit which will hold the wine, and they hold the wine there, and there in that pit, which is tarred, so the wine doesn't go into the wall of the pit. The wine ferments and bubbles up. That's the wine making of Chazal. Now, Yayin Nesach, Yayin, if a goy touches a Jewish judge's wine, it becomes Aser Bahanoah. That we know. If a guy touches wine, even if he didn't use it to serve as avodah zarah, it becomes Aser Bahanoah. The question is, when a guy touches his own wine, when do you define something as being wine? When is something called wine? So the answer is, as I have here in the picture, when it falls in the pit outside the wine press, when it falls and leaks into the pit, all of a sudden that makes it wine. So if the guy touches something in the pit, that is yayin nesach. But if a guy would touch something over here in the wine press, right? Even if it's just juices there, it is permitted. It is permitted, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that is the aside of the Mishnah. By the way, not this is only regarding yayin nesach. In other words, when we try to define wine, it's particularly as it pertains to avodah zarah. When you want to define whether you make a bayre priagafen, so as soon as you squeeze it, we make a bayre priagafen, the juices on the juices. So it's in nazir also. The juice makes it like wine. So that makes it usher. However, when it comes to yayin nesach, what would the goyim put on their avodah zarah? You only use real fermented wine, so only juices that are in the pit become fermented. That's wine. So if a guy touches that, it becomes aser bana. Whereas if a guy touches the juices that are in the wine press, it is not aser bahana. And that's the Mishnah. Zuk the Mishnah. You're allowed to buy the juices from a guy as long as it's still in the wine press. Even if the guy is sticking his hand into the wine press, the noisin letapuach, and taking some of the grapes back up onto the incline, as you can see in the picture, the guy took somebody took the grapes and put it back onto the top. So he touched all the juices. The Ve'ena yaisi ayin nesach at sheyered labar. Until the yayin nesach, it doesn't become yayin nesach until it goes into the pit. Once the juices go into that pit, if the guy touches it, then it becomes asur bahano. Yared labar, if it went into the pit, so then masha babar also, whatever is in the pit is prohibited, asur bahano, because the guy touched it. Vashar mutar, and everything else is mutar. So let's say you have juices that are in the pipe going out into the pit. If you just touch the pit, the juices that are in the pit, whatever is going to be on the pipe leading out of the wine press to the pit is still not considered wine, and therefore it would be permitted. Now, there was another thing that the Mishnah is discussing over here, a very interesting thing. The Chazal really wanted that Jews should at least make their fruits betahara, because there are people that eat their fruits and food betahara. They put an isser that you shouldn't make anything betuma, especially if you were tame and you started dealing with your fruits, and then you'd matama your fruits. So then when you're going to take off truma, you're giving tame fruits to the kohen. So they wanted you to to deal with fruits and bitahara. And if you don't do that, then you're doing an avera. And therefore, if you have a not from Jew who's matama his fruits, it would be usher for a frum Jew to take a job by that non-frum Jew, because he's always being mitama of his fruits. But the Mishnah said, Dorchim, we're going to the bottom of the page, Dorchim im hanochri begas. A Jew is allowed to press and stamp on the grapes prior to them actually even putting that big beam onto the grapes. That the guy would stamp on the fruits, and he would hire a Jew to help him stand on the fruits, like in Lucy. And you're allowed to do it because the guy in Eretz Yisrael already was mitama his Paris, because as soon as he put the grapes into the wine press and he started pressing, he started putting his feet on it, and now the juices made the grapes susceptible to tuma, and everything is tame because the wine press is tame. So a Jew is helping a guy deal with his tame wine, but nevertheless, a Jew is allowed to, if the guy hires him, he's allowed to be a presser with the guy in the wine press. We go to Ahmed Bays. He's not allowed to cut grapes with him, because when the guy cuts the grapes, it's already tahar, right? It's not tameh yet. It's only when he puts it into his wine press does it become tameh, because it became susceptible to tumah because you pressed juices out of it, and the juices makes the grapes susceptible to tumah. So a Jew is not allowed to make fruits tameh in Eretz Yisrael, even if it's a guy's fruits, because we're hoping that one day the guy before maybe pressing it would sell it to a yid, and therefore there will be more tahar fruits in the street. So a yid is not allowed to help a guy harvest his grapes. Now, Yisrael, a Jew, shu isa betuma, that doesn't listen to Chazal, let's say a non-frum Jew, he makes his fruits, he doesn't care, he makes it betuma. So a frum yid, since this is not lifnei iver, by the way, because this non-frum Jew is going to do it anyway. So you're just being masayeh, you're helping him out. So loy darchim, you're not allowed to help him even step on the grapes. The loy baitzum, you're certainly now to harvest grapes, because you're helping this yid be metama those grapes, and a yid has a chiyuv to give a truma, and he's giving the opportunity to yid to metama his tevel, and ultimately the truma that he's going to give off is going to separate, is going to be tameh. But that's only before it became tameh. But once he made the wine, once the yid made the wine, once the non-from Jew made the wine, so then the from Jew can be a delivery boy. He can help him bring the barrels. He can bring barrels to the wine press and take the sealed barrels of wine from the wine press, because it's too late. It's ex post facto, where the non-from Jew actually was matama the grapes. Then we say the same idea. Nachtoim shu oise betuma loy lashim v'loy archinimai. And a Jewish non-frum breaker that is baking and kneading bread, right? So a frum guy should not be helping him, because once you mix the water with the flour, now the flour is going to become tameh, because you're making the flour susceptible to tumah. So a yid is not allowed to help him out, even if the bread is tameh already. But you're helping the goy, they're helping the non-frum Jew while he's doing that avera. So loy loshen, a frum Jew is not allowed to help a non-frum baker knead his bread, loy archim imoy, or to make the dough and to form it into shape. But once the bread is baked, then the frum yid could be a delivery boy to the non-frum baker. He's allowed to help him bring breads to the retailers. Okay, so we're going to stop over here, but and discuss this all in the sugyas to come. But one thing you learned from today, which we'll see that it's not so pashut, that what defines wine by a guy is when it comes into the pit. Once prior to it coming into the pit, it's not considered wine. And that is not going to be the case. We're going to learn that our Mishnah is one type of Mishnah. There's other, Chazal started to say that even the juices in the wine press will also be considered wine, to be aser bahana if a guy would touch it. Okay, we'll discuss this tomorrow. Gute Nacht, everybody.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. Now.